Before past the hour this morning, the Supreme Court's new term has now begun as the court now faces arguments in a series of cases from gun rights to social media. The new term begins as a recent Gallup poll found that just 41% of people in the U.S. approve of the court's job performance. It's a near record low. Joining us now, NBC's senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, great seeing you. What are the big cases that the court will be facing this term?
Hey, Jose. Well, the two big ones to watch there, as you mentioned, social media regulation, as the justices are going to be evaluating a pair of cases out of Florida and Texas as conservatives have tried to regulate how social media companies decide who should be on their platforms and not. That is certainly one to watch as the tech companies are pushing back in a big way, saying, hey, this violates our First Amendment rights. As for the gun case, that's an interesting one having to do with those who are under restraining orders for domestic violence and whether they should be allowed to have firearms. It's an interesting case to watch, particularly as it has a relation to one of the statutes that the president's son, Hunter Biden, has been charged with. So how the justices decide this one about domestic violence could have implications for what happens in Hunter Biden's case as well. And then finally, the biggest case to watch, Jose, is one that hasn't actually been granted yet, but it has to do with the fate of mifepristone, that abortion pill, as it has wound its way around the federal courts. The justices are set to decide that case. It hasn't been officially listed on the docket yet, but we expect it will soon. And finally, I should mention, Jose, an orders list came out just a short time ago listing which cases the justices are not going to take up this case, this term. One of them has to do with John Eastman, someone who has been charged alongside former President Trump in that Georgia election interference case. He wanted to make sure the January 6th committee didn't get their hands on his emails. They did, but he was still fighting it, took it all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided today they're not going to hear that case. But what was interesting is Justice Thomas actually recused himself from making any deciding vote in that case. It's interesting because Justice Thomas has been under some scrutiny for his own ethical issues. He has not recused himself in past January 6 cases. But I should mention Eastman is one of his clerks. No telling about why exactly he decided to set aside in that case and recuse. But it's an interesting note there, Jose.
And so the decision was to not even deal with that case, but Thomas was not part of that decision.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so, it's typical to not know exactly why they decide to recuse in a given case.
I wish for the amazing new